What's going on, everybody? It's McFly here. So I saw this video on YouTube the other day and before I got sick, and I wanted to react to it. It's about 8 minutes. It's from Jaby on YouTube. Link will be in the description below. Make sure you subscribe to his channel. He's an awesome reactor, awesome YouTuber in general. So make sure you follow and subscribe. Essentially, he brought up something interesting that I think is important for kind of the modern day filmmaking and just how movies are released to the public. So the video is called Spider-Man No Way Home Recut and Changed After Release in Theaters. So it's an 8-minute video. We're gonna watch it and then we're gonna talk about it. There's a lot to kind of unpack with this, but let's go ahead and get into it and see what he says. All right, here we go.
Welcome, folks. I am Jaby and I'm doing this from my office because Achara Kirk commandeered my living room to do some long-form reactions. I thought this would be a nice change of scene anyway, having the Spider-Man No Way Home trailer.
And follow him on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube.
It's not distracting. Anyway, I wanted to talk to you guys about changes that were made to Spider-Man No Way Home after it was already put out there in movie theaters. And I also wanted to ask you guys how you feel about changes to media in general after it's already been put out there for public consumption. Me personally, I grew up on physical media. I grew up on VHS tapes, DVDs, the first iteration of Blu-rays, physical media, video games, all that stuff. And now we're in the age of streaming and digital downloads, and changes can be made anytime. I never really thought about the fact that movies are put out in theaters digitally now, because it used to be that films were sent to theaters in big film canisters. So it was too costly and impractical to make changes to films after it already went out in theaters. Now, with everything being streamed to theaters and put on hard drives or shipped on hard drives, it's a lot easier to make these changes than it ever was before. Back in the late 90s.
Essentially what he's saying is, before movie theaters, they literally send film. For all of you kids who don't know what films looks like, it's literally just film, a reel of film that goes through the reel and it pushes the image through, but it's going so fast that it's moving, right? So that's how it used to be in the theaters. Now they're pushing out hard drives, just like we have in our computer with the movies on it, that they put into a system that plays these movies, right? So it's all digital also in the movie theaters as well.
90s, George Lucas put out an updated version of Star Wars, the original trilogy, and he called it the special edition versions. What people didn't realize at the time was that there was no walking back on these special edition versions, and that those were the definitive versions going forward. For purists, this was abhorrent and terrible. And today, you can't buy the original versions that
I mean, the difference there is massive, right? I mean, just in that picture alone, from 1997 to 1977,
and terrible. And today, you can't buy the original versions that were shown in theaters before 1997. Today, you can only buy the special edition versions of those movies, and it's very frustrating for those individuals because the only way to get them is to go on eBay and buy like a very primitive old version on VHS or DVD or Laserdisc of the original trilogy. Otherwise, you won't be able to watch them. There are people out there who are trying to put together high-res versions of the original trilogy, but who knows when that'll be made for public consumption. Now, the changes that were made for Spider-Man No Way Home, I'm about to go into them, but I want to let you know in advance that there are spoilers in these changes, so if you haven't watched Spider-Man No Way Home yet, don't watch this video until you've seen that movie.
spoilers!
Is a link in the description below for the article that I read that shows you videos, side-by-side differences between what was before and what is now. I'm not comfortable showing you those video clips. I will show you stills for side-by-side comparison. So the first change I'll talk about is the portal when Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire show up for the first time in the movie.
So before he gets into this, I actually saw on YouTube a video of how they made this change. I don't have an issue with this one just because I always thought that how they did the Doctor Strange portals in No Way Home didn't match how it was in the other movies. I mean, it's very cloudy and it has a bunch of almost like dust and smoke. And the way they timed it made more sense with when Toby says it closed, where it was actually closed by the time he said it. So
the original version of these portals had more of a smoky look to it, a smoky texture,
right.
And it was updated to look more like the traditional Doctor Strange portals that we're used to seeing. Minor change.
I think that's much better.
Deal. The film is essentially the same. And the film is essentially the same for the other change I'm about to talk about, but it is more aggressive. The scene where Green Goblin is by the dumpster and he's like shifting around with his stuff trying to hide it, the shots are slightly different now, and the edits are slightly different from what it was before. It's very strange to me that the version of No Way Home playing in theaters right now is probably different from the version you saw in theaters or the version I saw. Does this thought make you guys at all uncomfortable? Are you totally fine with it? I mean, the overall experience of the movie is essentially the same, and it's probably just closer to what the filmmaker intended, but it is odd that, kind of like video games, you can do patches on movies now and just update it later on. I don't personally like that. I'd like it to be that whatever is out there in theaters is the final form, and that's it. But now we're in an age that I would call the George Lucas age, where things can be changed anytime. For some reason, it makes me uncomfortable, and that's the main reason I'm making this video, because I want to know how many of you guys it makes uncomfortable.
Well, Jaby, I said in his comments, and I'll actually pull it up while I'm talking. I think on a smaller scale of this, I don't see really an issue with them making changes if it means it makes the movie better. How I envision the movie theater movies now is, especially with Blu-rays where it's all digital and it can be edited after the fact, and we have bonus features and things like that. Even past that now, though, because we're streaming, right? But how I look at things now is the theater is kind of the release of the movie in theater is kind of the beta version, right? Beta version essentially is, it's pretty much the final version and if there are any issues, they fix it for the actual release. And that's kind of how I envision this whole movie theater to DVD, right? The problem here that I have with them editing it in the theaters is kind of what he said is, I went and saw this opening weekend or opening week. What I see, right? If I have my dad go see the movie who hasn't seen it yet, and he goes and sees it, he might be seeing a different version of the movie. It's essentially the same. The storyline's going to be essentially the same, but he's going to see something different. As an avid gamer who sees unfinished games released all the time, Call of Duty, Activision, thank you very much, I am weary of this. It sets a precedence that you can essentially charge for an unfinished product. I disagree that the theater release has to be a final product, as making sought changes after seeing feedback is a good thing. If you think of Sonic the Hedgehog was one of those movies where they released the trailer, people were appalled by the look of Sonic, they listened to the fans, they spent almost an extra year on it, and they fixed it. I have no issues with that part of it. I do have an issue from the very first week of opening to the release of the DVD. You might have reshoots, you might have completely different scenes added or removed from the movie. And we've seen this before where there were other movies that, I think it was Endgame, second or third week of the movie being released, they added an end credit scene to it, which I missed because I saw that, I think, the second week of opening. It doesn't hold creators accountable for the mistakes that they make in movies and games, right? We're paying $20 if you're seeing this in IMAX and the comfy seats, right? Or 3D is even more. You're spending $20 at the movie theater just for the tickets to see this movie, and you're essentially ending up with an unfinished product. Who's to say that this won't move over to the DVD? They do this all the time where they have the enhanced or the director's cut. When are we going to get to the point now where we're streaming, right? And you watch the movie, you watch the stream, and it's updated now. So now they've added 13 minutes. So let's watch that. Oh, look, they've added 20 minutes. You're going to have to pay this much to watch this extra 20 minutes. It's just something that I see happening with these movies. If they're going to follow suit with what the video game industry is doing, like 343 with Halo, that was unfinished when it was released. All of these last Call of Duty games have been unfinished at their release. I'm very, very cautious and weary of this and what this could turn into. It could be much ado about nothing. This could just be fixing little things here and there. I don't agree with being able to go in and edit the things at the theater. Like I said, I don't think that the theater release needs to be the final product, but I do think what is in the theater needs to be that final product. Meaning, if they want to change it from the theater release date to the DVD or stream release, whatever, and make changes there so that when they release it on DVD or Blu-ray, that's then changed to be the new finished product, that's fine. But to have little edits here and there in the theater, I don't like that. I think it's dishonest. So that's kind of my take on this whole thing. Let's finish up the video and see if there's anything else he added, because I don't think I actually finished the rest of this video.
Did a correction and went into everyone's Kindles and took the book out. Obviously, this led to backlash and people felt very uncomfortable with this, but it did highlight the fact that you don't actually own anything in the digital era. If you download something or stream something, there is no ownership over it. Whereas if you buy a DVD,
so here's where I disagree with him. He says in the digital era, you don't actually own anything, and that's very incorrect in my opinion. legally speaking, he's technically correct. Now that we're streaming everything in the digital era, we go into Amazon. We don't own any of the property or any of the stuff that is in Prime Video's catalog or Netflix catalog. We own the right to view them. We do not own those particular movies. This is part of the reason why I like to buy Blu-rays and stuff, because then I own that actual media. However, where I think he is incorrect is, for me, I think where there's a gray area here is if I buy, like I did, I bought Venom on Amazon's Prime Video. I bought that, right? I don't physically have it physically on me, but I do have that in my Amazon. However, I don't like to watch it on Amazon. So what did I do? I go and I download it elsewhere and I put it into Plex where I can watch it wherever I am. So there are ways around it. It might be a little bit unorthodox and technically not legally sound depending on how you go about it. There are ways to own media and to kind of circumvent certain things. And don't get me wrong, if I'm paying for something like Venom where I spent $10 on it, I then bought and reimbursed the owner and the creator of that. Therefore, I see no issues with going and doing the other route because I did pay for it. I'm just making sure that I have ownership of it.
DVD, a physical book, a Blu-ray, a
Right.
video game. If you buy physical media, whether it's a movie or a book or a game, you essentially have a version that is unchangeable. Obviously, with video games, patches can be done, updates can be made, but for the most part, what you have isn't going to change. Whereas, if you're streaming a movie, if you're watching it in theaters now, if you're doing a digital download, changes can be made anytime. Now, a more recent example, another example that's more innocuous and actually I'm okay with, is an update to Elliot Page's name on Umbrella Academy. That's a show that is streamed on Netflix, and it formerly said Ellen Page, but after Ellen Page became Elliot Page, they updated the show to represent who he is now. However,
And I agree. I don't have an issue with that.
if I were to buy Juno on Blu-ray or DVD, and that right there is the big difference between physical media and streaming or digital media. So if you're a purist, there's no way to have the original version of whatever you saw, whether you saw it in theaters, whether you streamed it, whether you did a digital download. If the publisher, the company, whoever wants to make a change to these items, you don't have any say-so over the matter. You have agreed to allow them to reach into your device and make changes anytime, or make changes on their library that you're streaming from anytime. And there's nothing you can do about it. I would imagine that younger people watching this video don't give a shit and you're okay with it and you're used to changes happening all the time. It's like whatever. But for someone like myself who grew up on VHS tapes, DVDs, the first iteration of Blu-rays, that is unsettling and I don't necessarily like it. I understand it, but I don't necessarily like it. Spielberg quoted some famous filmmaker a long time ago saying that films are never completed, they're abandoned. And at some point you gotta abandon the work. It's like, it's out there now. That is the version that's out there. Don't George Lucas this thing. It's just out there now. Now, if you read up on Spider-Man No Way Home, so many things seem to be happening really late. Like, Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire didn't actually sign on to the film until December of 2020. The film came out in December 2021. That turnaround is crazy, which says to me that it was a rush to get it ready for public consumption by December 2021, which makes sense as to why they're doing updates after it's already out in theaters. I get it. I totally understand why they are doing these changes. It's necessary, but it still doesn't sit super well with me, and I guess I just want to know from you guys if it doesn't sit well with you either. This might be what it is going forward, though. It might be that just like with video games where you get patches, updates, movies are going to have the same thing where after it hits theaters, after it hits your TV, there'll be patches and updates to make the visual effects more complete, better rendered. And in some ways, I'm okay with that. In other ways, I'm not. There are older films that I would like to see updated visual effects to, and I reach into my system and just update it.
Blade and Spawn would be
streaming library. One of my favorite movies of all time, Infamous 2. I wish they would give me an updated version that I could just play right now, but they don't have it. The only version I can play is the old version. Anyway, that's not the point. The point is, there are pros and cons to this, but do the pros outweigh the cons? And I leave that to you guys.
No.
Do let me know your feelings in the comments below. I am so curious who else feels the way I do, confused, unsure. Maybe it's okay.
Thank you, Jaby, for the video. On the surface of it, I don't have issues if it means they're making any type of media better, right? Now with the digital age, if we can go in and make things as close to perfection as we possibly can, that's awesome. The problem is history has shown us with these video games and stuff that it is very difficult to do that. And what happens is people, instead of saying, we're going to make this great as possible, you miss on some things, you go back and you fix it later, and it is close to perfect. What happens is people are like, well, we just need to get this out. Just get it out. We'll fix it later because we have updates. And that's what happens is people get complacent and they worry more about quantity than they do quality. And it ends up being a pattern where it's just constantly fixing issues that were allowed because of, you know, the time constraints. So I thought this was an interesting video from Jaby. We'll see where it goes. I hope it doesn't turn into what's become of multiplayer games and stuff. But what do you guys think about this? I want to know, just like Jaby, what your opinion on this is. It's kind of a different video that I posted, but I thought it was an important one, especially with being my channel shifting into entertainment. Let me know what you think in the comments. I do appreciate it. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. And remember, please go and subscribe to Jaby's channel. He's really cool. I love all his stuff. And I appreciate him letting me react to the video. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it. Please remember, good vibes are contagious.